How's it going, folks? I'm Des with DesFit, and this is the new TicWatch Pro 5 from Mobboy, and this joins the short list of watches that can currently run WearOS 3, joining the likes of the Google Pixel Watch and the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 and 5. Now, along with running WearOS 3.5, it also has quite good battery life, plus it offers quite a bit on the sports and fitness side of things. And from my testing over the last few weeks, I think this strikes a nice balance between something like a Pixel Watch and a Samsung Watch. So in this video, I'll be going over everything that the new TicWatch Pro 5 has to offer, including the new hardware, how it performs as a smartwatch using WearOS 3 and the new Snapdragon W5 Plus chipset, what you can expect for real-world battery life, and just like all my reviews, I'll be diving really deep into the sports and fitness functionality, going over GPS accuracy, heart rate accuracy, altimeter accuracy, and I'll also be covering a lot of the training feedback this has to offer, like recovery time as well as VO2 max. And if you do happen to find the information in this video useful, do me a favor and just quickly hit that like button down below. Oh, and if you're curious about the TicWatch Pro 4, well, there actually wasn't one, and the reason for this is the same reason that Garmin chose not to do a Phoenix 4, because in Chinese culture, the number 4 sounds like the word death, so that's why you may see some companies avoid that, because hey, nobody wants any of those bad vibes. So starting out with the hardware, on the outside, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between this new TicWatch Pro 5 and the previous generation TicWatch Pro 3 Ultra, where it retains that same classic design like before, and it looks like, well, a watch. The main difference though with the TicWatch Pro 5 versus the previous generation is that it now has a rotating dial, very much like the Pixel Watch. In fact, it works very much like a Pixel Watch, where you have the middle button, which is also the rotating dial, which can access apps. Then you have the upper right-hand button that accesses recent apps, and then you have the touchscreen, of course. And they're using a combination of a 7000 series aluminum alloy case as well as some steel into construction, along with some resin or plastic elements. But overall, this is a very well-built watch. It feels solid, the buttons are positive, it looks refined, it has a 5 ATM water resistance rating, and it's just a nice piece of hardware. Oh, and I also wanted to point out, by the way, that you may see some banding on some of the shots in this video, and that's just due to me not being able to find the right frame rate on my camera to match the refresh rate on the display. You don't actually see that in real life, so I just kind of wanted to mention that. The watch case is just a hair over 50 millimeters wide, including the rotating dial, and it's just a little bit over 48 millimeters without the dial, and then it's just a little bit over 14 millimeters thick, including the heart rate sensor. And then it weighs about 63.5 grams, including the band, at least on my scale. And then this is how it looks on my 185 millimeter circumference wrist. The display itself is 1.43 inches in diameter, and the main display when you're interacting with it is a OLED panel, and it's a great looking display. But on top of that, they also have this ultra low power display, and this is basically your always on display. But unlike the always on display that's found on some other smartwatches where the main display just dims, this is actually another display altogether that it automatically switches to when you're not interacting with it. Now, there's some neat things about this display though. So first off, it displays a good deal of information, like on this main page, like my steps and heart rate, along with the time, of course. But then there's some additional tiles that you can access by rotating the dial, like your heart rate, your blood oxygen saturation level, as well as calories. And then on the sports side of things, same deal here, where if you're interacting with your watch, it uses the OLED display, but after a while it saves on energy by using the low power display, where it shows different workout metrics like your pace, your heart rate, distance, and so on. But there's even one more trick with that display. So it's not a traditional full color display, as you've noticed, but it actually can change colors. And what's really neat about this is that it can change colors based on your heart rate zones during workouts. That's pretty cool. Oh, and then one more thing I forgot to mention is that these displays are protected by Gorilla Glass. And then for smartwatch capabilities, it comes with WearOS 3.5, so this is going to be compatible with Android phones, but it's not going to be compatible with iPhones. But since it does run the latest version of WearOS, it has stuff like Google Wallet for contactless payments, there's Google Maps, there's Spotify support, you can use the Strava app, there's YouTube Music, and then of course you can download more apps from the Google Play Store. Now at the moment though, there's no support for Google Assistant nor the Fitbit app, and they said that this is just an at the moment sort of thing, so I'm not really sure if and when that's going to come, but just kind of wanted to point that out. And another thing I wanted to mention is that they don't have a cellular or LTE version of this watch, but you still can take calls on the watch itself as long as your phone is nearby. And it does also come with an onboard speaker and microphone. And this is how the speaker sounds like on the TicWatch Pro 5.
And this is how the microphone sounds like on the TicWatch Pro 5. So how does it sound to you?
And then for notifications, these will be robust notifications here. So you'll get all your app notifications and stuff like that. And then with text, you'll be able to reply with an on-screen keyboard, voice dictation, or emojis. And then in addition to all that, it also has haptic vibrations for alerts, but they are a little bit subtle for my taste, where I'd prefer them to be a little bit stronger. And then it also has Bluetooth 5.2, it has Wi-Fi, and it comes with 2 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of storage. And then when it comes to battery life, this is kind of where the TicWatch Pro 5 really shines. So they say it has a 628 milliamp hour battery with a rated capacity of around 611 milliamp hours. Specs aside, you can basically get up to 80 hours of use as a smartwatch, and this was very much what I experienced out of it, where I was getting a solid 3 days out of it, even with recording about an hour's worth of outdoor activities per day. So that 80-hour claim seems to be about right. And of course, that number will depend on how much you interact with your watch, as well as how many outdoor activities that you do. But the TicWatch Pro 5 also comes with their Essential mode. So what this does is that it basically turns off the OLED display and just uses the low power display, and also turns off all the smart functions. However, what's cool about this Essential mode is that it's still tracking your steps and sleep, and in this Essential mode you can get up to 45 days of use. And then another thing in regards to battery life is that the TicWatch Pro 5 also has a fast charging feature, where if it's completely empty, it can get up to a 65% charge in just 30 minutes. And something else that I thought was kind of cool is that it even shows the charge percentage all the way down to the hundredths of a percent when you're charging. Kind of geeky, I know, but I thought that was kind of neat. Oh, and another thing I wanted to talk about in regards to battery life is for recording outdoor activities. So with their TicExercise app, they basically have 2 modes, a high performance mode, and then they have a normal mode. And the difference here is that with the normal mode, it's recording GPS points every 3 seconds versus the high performance mode, where it's recording every second, which takes a bit more power. But there isn't any difference in terms of heart rate recording. It's recording heart rate every second. What's interesting about this though is that I didn't necessarily see a difference in terms of power consumption. So in normal power mode on this ride, I started out at 99%, and then after an hour and a half ride, I had 85% remaining. So just doing the simple math, it comes out to about 9.33% per hour. And then on this ride, I was using performance mode, and I started out at 70%, and after this 2 hour and 15-minute ride, it was down to 48%. So in both modes, at least from my testing, I didn't necessarily see a difference in terms of battery life, but I definitely did see a difference in terms of GPS accuracy, and we'll cover that here in just one bit. But overall, battery life for just day-to-day use is a great feature of this watch. It's about the same, if not more, than what you can get out of a Galaxy Watch 5 and Watch 5 Pro, and much more than what you can get out of a Pixel Watch. And then it also does have the Essential mode, which is a nice backup if you start to run out of juice. And then when it comes to health and activity tracking, the TicWatch Pro 5 can track your heart rate 24 hours a day. It can track your blood oxygen saturation levels. It can track your stress. It can track your breathing rate. It can track your steps. It can track your floors climbed, and then it can track your calories. And then on top of all that, it also does track your sleep, and it also gives you a sleep score, as well as tracking your sleep stages. Now, it does a really good job at tracking the total time I slept, as well as the time I went to bed and the time I woke up. And then when it comes to sleep stages, I'm not hooked up to any machines or anything like that, so I can't really track those down to the T, so I don't usually dive really deep into the accuracy of stuff like REM, light sleep, and deep sleep, but for the time I spent awake, it does seem to do a pretty good job. And then it also does provide a sleep score, and this is where I would say it's overly encouraging, and if you've watched any of my reviews, you know that my sleep quality kind of sucks, and my sleep quality was definitely not in the 80-something% range on these nights. And then when it comes to tracking sports, it has over 100 sport profiles, they say, and it has all the common stuff that you'd expect, like running both indoors and outdoors, indoor and outdoor cycling. It has plenty of gym profiles, it has pool swimming, and it even has open water swimming. What you'll notice about some of these profiles, though, is that there's some very specific profiles in here, like incline dumbbell curl and incline dumbbell press, which are basically just specific exercises in an otherwise larger weightlifting routine. So that's something where if you really want to track each individual exercise in your entire workout, I guess you can, but that seems like a lot of interaction with the watch. And when it comes to tracking outdoor activities, the TicWatch Pro 5 has built-in GPS, so you'll be able to go track your run, walk, or bike ride without having to bring your phone with you. It uses a technology called multi-GNSS, meaning that it can access 5 different satellite systems, and it basically automatically chooses between these based on your location and availability. Now, the chipset they actually used on the TicWatch Pro 5 actually does support multi-band GNSS, where it could access 2 different satellite frequencies at one time, but they actually did decide to just use this single band on here. And I'm not sure of the exact reason, but I do know that antenna design does play a factor in taking full advantage of that technology. And when it comes to first acquiring a GPS signal when you first go to start an activity, it's pretty quick for me, where it usually takes anywhere from around 8 to 10 seconds to get a fix. And then, like I was mentioning earlier, there's those 2 different power/accuracy modes with their TicExercise app. And in regards to how these actually perform, on this ride here, here, I was using the regular power mode, and as you can see, it's quite close to the other devices, but just a hair short. But if we take a look at the actual GPS tracks, from a high level, everything looks good where there's no big misses or anything like that. But if we take a look at some of these corners up close, here's where we can see that it cut in on some corners here and there, and you can also sort of tell that 3-second recording rate on some sections where it just wasn't quite a smooth track. And then on this ride here, again, the total distance was pretty close to the other devices, but again, just a hair short. And if we take a look at the GPS tracks, we can see those less frequent recording rates, which results in just a little bit of jaggedness, I guess you could say, with the tracks, which may explain that slightly less distance. But when it comes to their high performance mode, here's a run where the total distances were right in line with the other devices, so we're good to go there. And then for the finer detail of the GPS tracks, it did okay here as well. It wasn't quite as accurate as some of the other devices that I was using, where you can see on some corners where it overshot a little bit here and there, but you can definitely tell that the sampling rate is a bit higher, at least in this high performance mode. And then on this ride, again, using their high performance mode, the distance actually turned out to be a smidge higher than the others, so nothing crazy, but just a little bit more. And then for the GPS tracks, certainly smoother tracks in the sense that it's definitely taking more samples, but there were some corners where it overshot a little, which may explain that little bit of extra distance. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that I did also record a ride using the Strava app just to see how it would do. And in regards to distance, it reported a bit more than the other devices that I was using, but the elevation gain was pretty much spot on. And then if we take a look at the GPS tracks, we can see that it wandered a bit here and there, which may have led to that extra quarter mile or so. Oh, and then I also wanted to talk about elevation gain really quick using its altimeter, and for the most part, it was very close to the other devices. On this ride here, it was maybe a smidge high, but on the rest of my test, it did a great job. And then when it comes to heart rate accuracy, so starting out with something on the easier side of things, here's a steady state indoor bike ride, and the TicWatch Pro 5 was solid here. And then here's another ride where things look good for the most part too. There was this little blip right here, but other than that, things are good to go. And then moving on to something a bit harder, here's some intervals, and overall a very decent job. However, it did have this odd little dropout right here, but it did recover quickly, and for all those intervals, it tracked them quite well, and also seemed to be very responsive. There was this interval right here though where it was a little bit late to respond in the drop in heart rate, but overall, this is pretty darn good. And then when it comes to taking this outside for some road biking, this is actually a very good result for road biking. So with this kind of activity, there's bumps from the road as well as vibrations coming from the handlebars, which can sometimes lead to inaccurate results, but the TicWatch Pro 5 handled this ride extremely well. And then same thing right here. This is quite good for road biking. There was this little delay right here where it was a little off and then an ever so slight blip here, but for road biking, this is very solid. Now, for an even harder activity, there's mountain biking, and this, other than weight training, is basically one of the hardest activities for wrist-based optical heart rate sensor to get right, and that's just due to tons of vibrations from the handlebars, from the rough terrain, plus you're gripping onto the handlebars a ton. Now, what's interesting here is that the TicWatch Pro 5 did well for nearly all the rides, so what you'll notice here is that if we take a look at the elevation profile below the heart rate graph, it's basically doing a very good job ascending as well as on this loop that I did a few times. But as soon as I started to descend, well, this is where the terrain gets really rough, and this is where a watch will start bouncing around on your wrist. And that's what we see here is where the TicWatch Pro 5 started to lose the plot. And then when it comes to running, what you'll notice here at the beginning of this run is what's known as a cadence lock, when a heart rate sensor gets thrown off by the impact of your feet hitting the ground. You can see that it locked back onto my heart rate here, then was thrown off again here, but after that, it actually did a pretty good job. And then when it comes to weight training, this is basically the hardest activity for a wrist-based optical heart rate sensor to get right, and that's just due to a lot of gripping onto dumbbells, as well as a lot of varying arm movement, which just throws off these kinds of sensors. And I sort of got mixed results here, so like on this session, not bad in the whole scheme of things, where it was actually quite close, except for this point in the middle where it tracked low here, and then it had a bit of a spike here. But then on this session, it was kind of the opposite, funny enough, where it tracked well in the middle, but not the rest of the workout. And then here's another workout where it's kind of a mix of weights as well as some intervals, where it tracked the intervals well, but the lift portions of the workout weren't all that great. So overall, for heart rate accuracy on the TicWatch Pro 5, I'd say it's kind of in that middle ground where it's definitely not the best out there, like let's say an Apple Watch or Garmin's latest generation heart rate sensor. It's not quite as good as Google's Pixel Watch either, but it is much better than what you can get on a Samsung watch. Oh, and then one more thing I wanted to mention in regards to heart rate accuracy is that at launch, there currently isn't any support for external heart rate monitors or any other external sensors for that matter. And I did provide that feedback to Modvoy, and they are aware that it is something that will allow this device to be a much more capable and more serious serious device for sports. So hopefully we will see that update in the future. And then in terms of training feedback, the TicWatch Pro 5 will try to give you an estimate of your recovery time from workouts, and it'll also try to estimate your VO2 max for running, and also tries to estimate this for cycling. And for running VO2 max, it ranked me a bit lower than what some other devices report for my running VO2 max, but that could also be due to some of the higher heart rate readings that were encountered on that run. And that's basically the thing, is that you will need the most accurate heart rate and distance to estimate this for running. But when it comes to cycling, having a power meter is also required for an accurate estimate, but at this point in time, the TicWatch Pro 5 doesn't pair to power meters, so it's just trying to estimate your VO2 max. And as expected, you may see some pretty wild numbers here, like I did, from everything from a much lower VO2 max than my actual, all the way up to Olympic level athletes. So my recommendation at this point is just to kind of not pay attention to this figure at the moment, unless they eventually decide to support power meters. And for recovery time, for the most part, it was giving pretty solid advice on most of my workouts, but there was just this one workout where it recommended a much shorter time than what I actually needed. And then when it comes to the Mobvoi Health app, it also does support third-party integration with Strava as well as Google Fit. And they also are building out a web platform where you can actually download your data easily, which does show that they're kind of dedicated to building out functionality here. Oh, and the last thing for all you TicWatch Pro 3 Ultra owners out there is that they tell me that they are still planning on updating the TicWatch Pro 3 Ultra with WearOS 3. I don't have a word on timing exactly, but they say it's on the schedule. So overall, I think that the TicWatch Pro 5 may be a good option for some of you out there who are considering a Pixel watch but wanted longer battery life and also wanted something a little bit larger since the Pixel watch is kind of small. And I also think it may be a good option for some of you out there who are considering a Samsung watch but wanted a bit better sports and fitness tracking. But a big ticket item that will improve this watch a lot and make it a much more compelling option as a sports and fitness device is that external heart rate support. And like I said, they will be looking into that functionality, but no promises there. But I have to say that from my interaction with Mobvoi's team, they do seem serious about building out that serious sports and fitness functionality. Anyhow, if you have any questions about the TicWatch Pro 5 that I didn't cover in this video, feel free to drop those down in the comment section down below. And on your way down there, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more sports tech videos that are right around the corner. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.